So good morning, everyone. My name is Maggie Woods. I'm Deputy Director of the Office of Digital Opportunity, and welcome to the Digital Opportunity Grant Track 1 Deep Dive. So the agenda for today is I'll start with a very quick overview of our office and an overview of the Digital Opportunity Grant, and then we'll do a deep dive into Track 1 and talk really specifically about the elements of Track 1, eligible expenses, ineligible expenses, and make sure that we're getting to all of your questions on Track 1. Just a note to please add your questions to the chat throughout the presentation. That makes sure that at the end we have enough time to review the questions, and then we'll get to them in the order that the questions come in. So please add them throughout the presentation, and if we don't get to it immediately, we will get to it right at the end. So just a quick overview of the Office of Digital Opportunity. I know many of you know us, but we sit in the Division of Broadband and Digital Opportunity within the Department of Information Technology, which is a cabinet level agency at the state. And we work really closely with our sister office, the Broadband Infrastructure Office, to close the digital divide. And we really see that digital opportunity is economic development, right? We're ensuring that people can afford the internet if they have it, that they have the computers to use so that they can access education and workforce development and job opportunities, and that they have the skills in order to do so. And so this gives kind of an overview of some of those key indicators that we are tracking to make sure that we are working to close the digital divide. I want to start by just giving a broad overview of the Digital Opportunity Grant, and I'm seeing many familiar names. And so if you've been on our previous webinars, this is a repeat, but it is always good to hear it again, right? To make sure you understand the specifics. So just to start, these funds are federal funding, right? So the Digital Opportunity Grant awards are contingent on federal approval and applicable law. We will keep applicants apprised of any additional updates and responses from the National Telecommunications and Information Administration, so that's our funder, or any changes in law that may change funding, program guidelines, or criteria. So just note that we will communicate with you should there be any changes, and always happy to answer any questions about this. So this is a $17 million digital opportunity grant. We're so excited about it. The period of performance is January 1st, 2026 to July 31st, 2029. There is one caveat to that. That January 1st, 2026 start date is really contingent on how fast it takes the NTIA to approve the grantees that we select. And so it could be a little later, it could be a little sooner, though we are really aiming for January 1st, and that will be specified in the contract that our grantees sign. Deadline for applications for this grant is June 9th by 11:59 p.m. And we do expect to fund total in the entire program about 10 to 15 projects. So the purpose of the program really is to develop new and expand existing digital skills, digital navigator, and online safety programs, as well as to create a structured system for the provision and deployment of computers to increase ownership, help desk, technical support, and those who need it. This supports strategies 3 through 5 of the Digital Opportunity Plan. I'm not going to read those at the moment because I will be talking about for Track 1 the specific strategies that we are focusing on in Track 1. So again, this is for the entire grant. So there are 2 program tracks for the grant, Track 1, what we're talking about today, and Track 2. So Track 1 is focused on digital skills, digital navigation, and online safety. Track 2 is focused on computer ownership, capacity building, and sustainability. Applicants can apply for both Track 1 and Track 2. How much can applicants apply for? It's a really good question. Again, focusing just on Track 1 today, applicants can apply between $1 million and $3.5 million per project. If you request more or less than the funding range, we will consider it, but you must include a justification for that request. And there is a question in the application asking you to justify. And then we will fund selected entities based on their requests and reserve the right to fund only a portion of an application should we choose. So applicant eligibility, this is for all tracks. We have kind of 5 key categories. So community service organizations, which would include local government, library systems, K-12 school systems, nonprofit organizations, specifically 501c3s, higher education institutions, regional entities, and state government agencies and federally recognized tribal government entities. In our FAQs, we go into pretty significant detail on what these categories entail. So definitely recommend that you check those out if you have questions. We're also happy to answer one-on-one questions too if you're unsure about whether you are eligible. For-profit entities are not eligible to apply for this funding opportunity. So program recipients and geographic requirements. All funded projects will focus on serving all digitally excluded populations in North Carolina. In our FAQs and in the guidelines, we do link to who the National Telecommunications and Information Administration kind of names as key digitally excluded populations. And then we also have a pretty comprehensive list of potential program recipients. That's not fully inclusive, but gives you examples of who you might want to think about as program recipients. And then in terms of geographic reach, priority will be given to organizations that are regional or statewide, and that will partner with or subgrant funding to smaller organizations. So again, really looking for projects that are at scale, but for the main applicant, looking that you are partnering with key organizations on the ground who have community trust in communities, and that those partnerships, seem valid, and that you're subgranting funds appropriately to them. So like I mentioned, all applications must be submitted via our Qualtrics application by June 9th. Application for each of the tracks is on our website, so you can get a link to the application as well as a list of all the questions. Highly recommend that you work on those questions in Word or similar program in advance before putting them directly into the Qualtrics survey. And all the applications will be reviewed by a committee of kind of external reviewers, both people within the digital opportunity field, as well as community partners and state agency officials. But then ultimately, our team at the Office of Digital Opportunity will review recommendations from external reviewers and make final selection decisions. So here's a little bit about our timeline. It shows when this opened. It shows the information sessions we've done and then the track specific webinars. If you're getting really curious about more about track 2 and you missed our deep dive yesterday, that will be on our website soon. So definitely recommend that you check that out. And then also wanting to note that we will have some more office hours probably towards the end of the grant cycle. And these office hours are really a way for applicants to join and ask any questions that are lingering, or you're trying to fill something out on that, on the application itself, and you're a little bit unsure. It's just a way for you to drop in, drop out. So we'll be announcing those soon. We do expect to make contingent awards in September, likely towards the end of September. Contingent because, again, the federal government must approve all of our selections. And so we will send those recommendations to the NTIA. And while we are waiting, we will work to train our grantees on some programming as well as support training in preparation for monitoring and compliance. We hope to receive approval from the NTIA in November with a grant start date in January 2026. Okay, Let's go a little bit deeper into track one now. So again, that was kind of a broad overview. Now we're going a little deeper. So the goal for track one is really to support strategies 3 and strategies 4 of the North Carolina Digital Opportunity Plan. So strategy 3, ensuring that North Carolinians can acquire the digital and information gathering skills and understanding to meet their personal needs and the state's workforce needs. And strategy 4, promote practices and leverage tools to ensure online privacy and security. And the way that we often talk about strategies 3 and strategies 4 is that they are very intertwined. In fact, a lot of our kind of implementation activities out of both of those were very similar. And that's because we really see online safety as being wrapped into digital skills training. And so just noting that there's a reason why those are together is because we see them as deeply, deeply intertwined. We had several measurable objectives. But just kind of highlighting 2 of them that we will be tracking as a part of this grant is that by 2029, we're looking to increase in percentage of North Carolinians who are confident using a number of online applications, including word processing programs, finding educational content online, applying for jobs online, and communicating with a healthcare provider online by 10%. And then by 2029, improve confidence and ability to protect personal data online by 10%. And excuse me, I'm a little under the weather today, so I'm hopeful that I don't cough during this session. But if I do, I will mute myself and then we'll get started again. Okay, so the key eligible uses or goals for track one is really to create or to expand or create digital literacy and online safety skills programs and or expand or create digital navigator programs throughout the state. And if you're not familiar with the term digital navigator, there is a definition. There's a definition for all of these terms in our guidelines. But a digital navigator, you like to think about it as like a healthcare navigator, except someone who is meeting individuals' digital needs. So that could be looking to find free or low-cost internet. It could be connecting them with digital skills classes or actually teaching some basic digital skills. It could be connecting them to free or low-cost computers. And it's really kind of a journey, right? You might meet them for one need, and then you end up continuing to work with them on many different needs. So within this, we're both looking to increase the capacity of current digital literacy and navigator programs led by partner organizations across the state, but also to fund the development of new programs that target funding for organizations with strong community trust. So these might be organizations that haven't been working in this field for as long or at all, but they have deep community trust and are now looking to add digital skills, digital navigator, online safety programs to their programming. Awardees will receive trainings on the state level. They'll receive trainings on state level digital skills standards and digital navigator best practices, and they must align their programs with the minimum standards and best practices. We're going to talk about this in a moment. We actually have a guest speaker from our research partner, NC State University, to talk about these standards and best practices. So we'll talk about that in just a moment. For track one, our total funding we have is just over $9 million. And again, the period of performance and the deadline remain the same as for the overview. And so we expect to fund between 4 to 9 projects for track one. So it will be highly competitive. Again, what we really recommend is those kind of strong partnerships as well, so that we are able to fund kind of other partner organizations around the state, but with one main applicant. That brings me to talking about partners. So as a part of the application, applicants must include a list of partners and or subrecipients involved in the project, and very specifically describe their role in the project. If all partners or subrecipients have not yet been identified, applicants must describe the process for identifying those partners. So for example, I know we've gotten at least a couple questions from potential applicants wanting to run their own competitive subgrantee selection process after they're awarded, and that would be eligible. They just have to describe that process for identifying those partners, how that process would go. So digging a little bit more into eligible expenses. So this is a list of the eligible expenses. You can find much more detailed descriptions of each of these on the website in the guidelines. But administrative and staffing expenses are eligible. So this includes personnel, travel, as well as indirect costs. Program expenses to run the program are clearly eligible. And then something we're calling other program expenses, which would include, say, wraparound services. We're saying, such as paying for transportation for participants to attend your class or to participate in a program. We're saying for wraparound services, no more than 5% of the budget. Small capital expenses as well as equipment is eligible. So these would be small capital expenses to enable program delivery. It could include, computers or Wi-Fi for classrooms. It could also include furnishing a classroom or building, again, kind of small capital expenses. Professional services, so financial services, legal services, definitely eligible. The NTIA does have specific allocation limits, and that includes a 5% cap on evaluation or impact measurement. So any evaluation that you're including should not go over 5%. And then funding must complement and not replace other funding sources. So, this just means that if you're receiving other funding, you must clearly distinguish how these funds will complement or expand the funding, not duplicate the funding that you already have. Ineligible expenses. So for track 1 specifically, you cannot purchase computers to distribute to individuals. That is a focus of track 2. And so this one is really not focused on distribution of computers to individuals. You can't use these funds for infrastructure deployment costs or related to kind of large scale construction, installation or deployment of broadband infrastructure. Purchasing equipment or material for physical infrastructure upgrades, so a lot on the infrastructure piece. These also can't be used for internet subsidies or to pay internet installation or subscription costs for individuals or households. And you can't use these funds to upgrade websites for accessibility. That is required by law. And again, grants may not be used for costs that will be reimbursed under other federal or state funding streams. So again, the kind of non-duplication, right? Just need to be really careful about that. So we've gotten a lot of questions around devices or computers in track 1. And so just wanted to kind of clarify that digital devices and technical equipment are allowable to enable program delivery or the administration of the project. So this could include a mobile computer unit. In fact, I think I'm seeing some questions about that in the chat. It could include a program computer lab, or it could include purchasing devices so that your staff have the appropriate computers that they need in order to run a program. Track 1 does not allow for the purchase of computers to give to individuals. That is the focus of track 2. So again, applicants could apply to track 1 and track 2, or if you're applying to track 1, we encourage connection with our track 2 grantees, and we will help facilitate that. So if you're running a computer program and you want to make sure people are connected to where they might be able to receive a free computer, we can make those connections with our track 2 grantees. Okay. So as mentioned, all of our grantees in track 1 will be required to attend trainings on digital skills and digital navigator best practices, and as appropriate, align their programming with the standards and best practices. I want to note that this was one element of the Digital Opportunity Plan. It showed up in implementation activity 3.1 and 4.1. Which was really focused on partnering with workforce and educational agencies at the state and local levels to identify and adopt high-quality digital skills standards, including digital privacy and cybersecurity standards and digital health literacy. And this was included because we got asked a lot about, what does it mean to be a digitally skilled person? And, I'm an organization. Can you point me to curricula or key elements to incorporate into a digital skills program? And so we could point to frameworks in other states. We could, of course, point to curriculum like the North Star curriculum, and we still do. But we really felt it was important to have some standards and best practices for this work on a state level. And so we're really excited to have partnered with NC State University, who's been able to bring together a fantastic group of experts in this field from all across the state, those who are working on the ground, to really pull together this group of standards. And before I introduce Becky, I just want to say we want these standards to be a resource to our grantees. We really do expect that those who are strong enough to be chosen as our applicants are probably in pretty close alignment with these standards anyway. And we're really just working to build out kind of a cohesive ecosystem where you have access to trainings. We don't want this to be a burden. We really want this to be a resource. And so I'm going to pass it to Becky Evans-Wilson to talk a little bit about how these standards have been developed. They're not quite finalized, but kind of the process and where we're at. And if you're interested, how you can be engaged in kind of the final recommendations. So Becky, I'll hand it over to you.
Thanks, Maggie. So I'm going to speak for the team that's been working here at NC State, and we've been working on this for quite some time when we think about developing both digital literacy and skill standards, as well as these digital navigation best practices. So there's sort of these two streams that were happening at the same time. And when you look back, we really in August of 2024, we started this landscape study to think about what does digital literacy, digital skills, and digital navigation, what's it look like in the state of North Carolina? And from that, we started with interviewing some key stakeholders. Some of you on the call were people that we've interviewed. So we talked to people across the state. There were 14 key organizations, and many more people within the organizations were represented as well. We really took the things that were said by those folks to help inform what we're generating as what's really happening on the ground in North Carolina. Between February and April of this year, we went through several feedback sessions with various partners across the state. We came up with some topic areas first, and then asked how people thought about those and got some feedback. We came up with structures, and then we drafted some content, and we held some feedback and listening sessions. And after each one, we really came back and revised each of the documents to represent more of what was happening in the state, but really was still in alignment with some of these national and international standards. The framework that we started with was the DQ framework, which is an international framework that's been used across many countries and many states in the US. But we really built it to fit what is happening in North Carolina right now. If you look at the rest of the timeline, you're going to see that this summer, these standards and best practices are going to be published. We're excited to partner with and pilot some of the online courses and modules that we're going to be designing this summer with some of the folks that are going to be doing some of this work in the fall and winter. Once we get these launched, we will then come back. Once they've been piloted, launched, we'll come back next year and we'll revise them to make sure we can expand this programming. So these are the digital standards in the draft form. If you look at it, there are 6 main standards areas. So we have digital identity, and underneath each of these standards areas, like digital identity, you're going to see 3 to 4 skill areas. So under digital identity, we talk about things like digital profile, the digital self, and digital footprint management. You go into each of these with each of the areas. So digital well-being, digital relationships, digital safety, digital reasoning, and then digital futures. So we've really got a broad swath here of what's included. And you look at things like digital safety. This is where you're going to have things like internet safety, device protection, online threat awareness, and scam awareness. Digital reasoning is a lot of those skills like Maggie was talking about, like source evaluation, being able to figure out what is misinformation and things that are going to help people be prepared for the workforce. Digital Futures is going to be that digital resilience, things like managing all of the data that you share across different platforms, and things like computational thinking and AI literacy. So if you're interested in digging in a little bit deeper, that link on the screen, that go.ncsu.edu/ncdl standards, will take you to the draft version of our digital literacy standards. Once again, these are highly draft. We're still going to be making some tweaks, but we also would like to have your feedback, and we'll talk to you about how you could provide that to us as we're sort of moving toward those published versions. The second stream that we talked about, in addition to those standards, is really the Digital Navigator best practices. So we started with what the National Digital Inclusion Alliance says are those standards for digital navigators and digital navigation programs that are doing the work in the field. And so we started with those. And then we took the interviews that we had conducted with folks across the state and thought about what is happening in North Carolina that makes this unique and that makes this work for the communities in our state. And that's where we really build out the practices that are supporting these standards that the National Digital Inclusion Alliance set out for digital navigation. And so when you get into these, you're going to start with those 7 main standards, but under each one, you're going to have different practices that are supporting that work. So just like the last one, if you want to grab that link there, you can either go on your cell phone and hit that QR code, or you can go to that link there, that go.ncsu.edu/digital navigator practices, and it will take you to that draft version of our digital navigator practices. And this is going to show you, just like I talked about before, how you have the main practice at the top from the NDIA, but underneath we have things that support the individual practices that are happening in our state. Another favorite of mine that's in there that you'll get to see are some quotes from folks across the state that are doing this work, and we would love to hear from more of you that are doing this work. Again, that's part that you can share as well if you have some insight to lend to it.
Great. Thank you so much, Becky. And we're having some people having trouble seeing the slides. And so they've asked to drop those links in the chat. So if you could do that, that would be fantastic. And also, folks are asking about kind of giving these preliminary standards and time for applications. I hope that sort of answers your question, is that you can access those. Applicants will not be penalized if they have not reviewed these standards by the time of their application. And I just want to note that on our original timeline, these standards would have been published before we launched this grant program. It's what was originally in our Digital Opportunity Plan. But ultimately, the way it worked with NTIA is we're on a different timeline that wasn't originally communicated to us about when we had to do our competitive grant program. And so we had to kind of do the two at the same time, parallel. So again, no one's penalized if they haven't reviewed these standards before applying. And we want these to be a resource for you, not a barrier. So please, I hope you see it that way. And we're really excited about this. There's been tremendous amount of work put into this by our research team, but also by nonprofits and community members across the state who have weighed in on how these standards kind of align with what they are teaching on the ground. Okay, so I just want to end this presentation and then open it up to questions by highlighting that we do have a lot of resources on our website. We do have the application links for both tracks 1 and track 2, as well as FAQs, which are updated based on your questions. We just updated them last week, I think. We have a budget template and instructions. We have the Digital Opportunity Plan Executive Summary, as well as the application questions. I also want to note that we have the Tech Resource Finder, which we hope is helpful to all of you. This is a user-friendly and online database where you can search for resources in your community, like where can people get digital skills classes, and where can people get a computer, and where is there public Wi-Fi. It is all crowdsourced data that is updated regularly, but I think it might be helpful if you're kind of trying to figure out who should be partners in this work or what already exists in my community. And that reminds me, as we go into questions, I also encourage anyone who's on here and wants to be a partner or a main applicant that's looking for a partner to note that in the chat so that there maybe can be some matchmaking as well. We saw some of that yesterday in track 2 of folks wanting to be partners and people wanting to be leads. And so definitely encourage you, if you're looking for a way to connect with others who are applying, to note that in the chat. I think though we can open this up to questions, and just to know, I know not all of you can see the screen, but if you have questions for us after this, you can always reach out at digitalopportunity@nc.gov with any questions that you have. We are monitoring that daily, and we'll answer as quickly as possible. So, Crystal, I did see some questions in the chat. What do we have?
Well, first off, I want to thank everyone for participating and for participating in the chat. Just so you know, this meeting is being recorded, so we will put both the slides and the recording up on the website later this week. So if you have any questions, it will all be there. So if you've had any challenges. We did have a first question from Jessica saying, in the first session, it was mentioned that there would be standards and best practices released. Will those be available soon to assist with our objectives? Now, Jessica, I do want to mention that I dropped the links in the chat, but they will be in these slides as well as on our website in the coming week.
Yeah, and I think we did answer, since we went into depth, I hope we answered that question for you, Jessica.
Perfect. Okay, we've had a few questions about those. And then I believe you addressed this during your chat, but I wanted to make sure that we double down on it. If there are computer labs currently being used for digital skills, can the track 1 be used to replace the existing devices?
Yes. So the way that I've been talking about track 1 is really the purpose is for digital skills, online safety, or digital navigation, right? So if purchasing devices, even if that's replacing devices, enables you to achieve that goal, then yes.
Okay, I'm going to go to a similar question. Would a mobile computer lab be an eligible expense?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, now we're going to change it up a little. Are the potential partners required to be nonprofit organizations also?
No, but they do have to fit within those eligibility requirements that we highlighted, those kind of 5 categories. So community services, nonprofit, higher ed, regional entities, or state government / federally recognized tribes.
That actually answers our next question from Kathleen. Kathleen, if you have any follow-ups to that, please let me know.
I think Kathleen's question was around subrecipients. I might ask Tamisha to answer this, because a partner may or may not be a subrecipient. One thing I'll know is, like, a for-profit entity could be a contractor. I don't think they could be a subrecipient, but Tamisha, do you have an answer to that?
It's funny she asked the question, because I just read in our NOFO that for-profits, it should not be a for-profit organization. For-profits will fall into a contract type of mechanism.
Yeah. So subrecipients would follow the same guidelines as partners then, but a for-profit could be brought in as a contractor.
Correct.
Okay, that answers my question. Thank you.
You're so welcome, Kathleen.
Okay, it looks like there were a lot of questions about the grant program guidance for track 1. And anything that may have been added to the chat may have been locked, but I'm going to add the link to our website that has all of that information available down there. I just posted it. Okay, scroll back up and see what other questions we have. Oh, good partnership opportunities there. Thank you for commenting. And yes, that we answered on subrecipients. Do the projects need to focus on one of the eligible uses, digital literacy and skills, digital navigator, online safety, and cybersecurity, or can applications focus on all?
They can focus on all. Or they can focus on one. Or two. We're flexible
Okay.
in that point.
We have another question from Jessica. Is there a rubric for the scoring of the grants that's available?
It's coming. I'm hoping it's going to be released by the end of this week or beginning of next.
Perfect. And I'm sure
And we'll make
email
sure
folks.
that, yes, we'll email it out.
Great, great. To all registrants of the webinars. And that's all of our questions for now. I have made it available for folks that have questions that might prefer to ask them live to go ahead and unmute yourself and turn on your camera and ask away.
And Crystal, there's a bunch more coming through the chat right now.
Yes, they are. Okay. Where should we look for updated resources? The website that I posted, the Digital Opportunity Grant on the ncbroadband.gov page, will have everything there.
And I'll just say that when we update the FAQs, we note it on the FAQs that they've been updated. So you can see the last date that they were updated. I think April 30th was the last day we updated them.
And we have one more question. Sorry if I'm fuzzy on the details, but can the applying organization also provide the digital literacy training within the standards, or must it be outsourced?
Oh, no. The expectation is that for track one, you are providing the digital literacy training. If it makes sense for you, you may want to outsource it, but I think in most cases, it would be your organization yourselves providing the digital literacy training. I think where it gets like, we're not really talking about track two here, but with track two, we do require the leads and partners to make sure that whoever receives a computer has access to digital skills training. And that's where, in those cases, they might be computer deployment experts, but may not be digital skills training experts. And they may want to outsource that or connect with organizations in track one or others in their community. But yes, either one, but likely the main applicant would be providing those trainings.
We have one more question in the chat, and then we'll hop to the raised hand. Nicole asked if we'd just be emailing those to folks who register for the webinars. And by webinars, I meant these this week and last week. We can certainly extend it out to all of our previous grantees and partners across the state as well. So yes, we can do that. Okay, and now we have a raised hand. It is Courtney, if you could unmute yourself and ask your question.
Yeah, thanks, Cheryl. On the application, there's a question that specifies either please check all of the counties that your project will serve, or the second option is all North Carolina counties. The project that we're looking at is probably going to prioritize certain counties within the state. However, we are an organization that serves the state at its entirety, so we weren't really sure which option would be better for us to select.
I think it probably makes sense to select the counties that you're focused on. It sort of depends on the project, and Courtney, I'd be happy to chat with you about it. I know as like a state agency, you're serving everyone, but if you're planning to really go deep on, 10 counties in the East, I'm making that up, it probably makes sense to select those counties and then just note when you're describing your work that while you're focused on 10 counties, this could, ultimately support statewide work.
Got it. Thanks. And Maggie, we may follow up a little bit more for a little bit more detail on that, but I think that's a good guidance point to start.
Yeah. It's a little bit of like, it's a gray area, right? Of what you would choose. But I think, again, if you're really hyper focused on certain counties, I would just state that.
Got it. Thanks.
Okay. Next question comes from Rhonda. If you could unraise. There you go.
Okay,
Perfect.
there we go. Hey, just had a question, and it's because I'm in far Western North Carolina. Work with I'm the ED of a nonprofit, very small, but we've been around for about 30 years, and digital training has been one of our things. But we're small, so I'm wondering if we even qualify for applying because we're, in this tucked away corner in North Carolina. Although our programs are great models for others, but should we, I guess, apply being so small, or should we just sit this out and wait, I don't know, to see if there are others, or if we can, I don't know, get the funding from a sub-grant from one of the larger organizations?
So how many counties do you serve?
We serve the 6 that are in the corner of Western North Carolina. So Graham, Cherokee, Clay, Swain, Macon, Jackson.
So I would say that you're serving a region, right? You're serving a region. So you absolutely could apply.
Okay.
You could also, if you felt like the kind of administrative burden of receiving a grant like this would be too much, you could try to find an organization that would have you as a sub-recipient. So you could do either way.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. Good question. Okay, our next one's from Lakeisha, who asks, can these funds be used to fund a regional cybersecurity or AI symposium, providing information and awareness to the community?
I'm thinking yes. We haven't gotten that question before, Lakeisha, but I think if you're framing it as, as skills building, right? I mean, maybe people could receive a certificate afterwards, or, it's a launch pad to encourage people to join, continued cybersecurity trainings. I think that that could be an eligible expense.
Yes, there's training included. Okay, that clarifies.
Great.
Perfect.
Then yes.
So we don't have any other questions. What burning questions do you have for Maggie and team? If we don't get some in the next few minutes, I have added our email address, digitalopportunity@nc.gov. If you have one-on-one questions, or questions that might have a lot of details that you want to go into depth with someone and ask for more information on if this would apply to you and your situation, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. We're here for you. Okay, so we received a question from Diane. So the total award, whether you apply for 1 or 3 categories, is $3.5 million.
Yes. And part of that, Lakeisha, is like, yes, there are categories, but I see them all as like they're all interplaying with each other, right? It's hard to talk about keeping yourself safe online without talking about digital skills and digital navigation. There's so much digital skills elements in that too. And so I don't even talk about this program as having like 3 categories, right? We're just trying to, that's more for our internal purpose to figure out like, what are you more focused on? But yes, the total, no matter how many you choose, is between 1 to 3.5.
Thank you, Maggie. Thanks, Diane, for that great question. And now Jessica had another question. Is the idea that we do create new curricula, or that we use NCDIT or Microsoft workshops, for example?
You can use whatever curriculum you would like. We do ask to know, because we want to see that you've done the research, and it could be that you want to create something new, and then we just want to know, why, right? Because there are so many kind of strong curricula available, but it might not be what makes the most sense for the people that you're serving or in your context. So we're just looking for kind of the thinking behind that. I'd say the DIT curricula is still in development and is meant to be more of a resource to you versus a curricula to provide to program recipients. So I wouldn't rely on that as something to use to provide to program recipients. But there are lots of curricula that are available. It's a great question. And I'll just a little context of why we ask it is that we've seen a lot of our current grantees and partners kind of try to create something from scratch when it may not be necessary, when something that really could help them or help as a base for them already exists. And so that's why we're asking that you're kind of thinking through what this looks like. It's possible your organization already has an established curriculum that you've vetted and you think is really strong. Then tell us about that, right? Or if you're creating something new, tell us kind of how you're creating it, or you're using, XYZ curriculum as a base, but you're updating it for your specific context.
Yeah. Do we have any other questions? They're live or through the chat.
Awesome. Well, in case there's other questions, please reach out if you have questions. That's what we're here for. We're always happy to, meet one-on-one if people want to talk about their specific project. I think where we draw the line is we won't read drafts of projects. We've had a number of people ask that, so we won't do that, but we're happy to meet and provide technical assistance. But please reach out if you have other questions, and thank you all so much.